Please welcome AirDNA founder and CEO, Scott Shatford.
Good afternoon, everybody. I am Scott Shatford, founder CEO of AirDNA. We are the largest aggregator of short-term rental data in the world. And today we're here to talk about destination marketing organizations. And when I started AirDNA 5 years ago, I had no clue what a DMO was. So I thought I'd start off just giving a brief general background on what a DMO is. A DMO is really, it's a nonprofit, sort of quasi-government sort of organization that their main objective is to drive tourism to a city. They come in all shapes and sizes. They can be for a city, small city, big city, county, or even a state. But they really are here to drive, four things. It's really to drive targeted ads to visitors looking to go to a particular city. Be able to track those visitors. How many people are going to that market? How much money are they spending? Drive PR. And really facilitate big events, exhibitions, meetings, conferences in these different cities. There's about 1,500 DMOs in the US. We sell to about 200 of these DMOs, partnering with them to help them understand what does the short-term rental market look like, how many people are coming to the city, how many properties are in that marketplace. They're also called tourism boards or convention and visitors bureaus. They don't really come in any particular shape or size. They're also sort of unique in how they're funded. They're funded via sort of a variety of occupancy taxes on one side of the spectrum and membership fees on the other side of the spectrum. And so what we've seen over our sort of research and working with DMOs over the last 5 years is that the DMOs that are more focused on the occupancy taxes, that they're fully funded 100% by occupancy taxes, they're much more likely to have pro short-term rental outcomes, because they're really involved in the success of all lodging in that environment and all the taxes that generates. So you can see sort of a general idea of how this works. And on the other side is the membership fees. So membership fees are from membership organizations. And these organizations are mostly hotels and other people that are benefiting from the windfalls of general tourism to a different marketplace. And they're much less likely to be friendly to the short-term rental environment. So something interesting to keep in mind as we work with DMOs moving forward. But I think DMOs are all trying to solve the same exact sort of riddle, which is for 100 years, lodging has been hotels. It's been hotels. It's been motels. But the emergence of short-term rentals and the convergence of short-term rentals to hotels has made this a much more complicated and fragmented industry to track. And we sort of think about this convergence between hotels and short-term rentals. We'd like to think about it in a couple of different ways. But one is that we like to think about it as what is truly competitive with a hotel property. And that would be like a studio or one-bedroom property. And we can see in some of these major metropolitan markets that the number of actual, what we would call competing supply to hotels is actually pretty nominal. It's about 10% of the overall lodging in these different cities. And the lion's share is really these larger units that are coming up in major markets and leisure destinations around the US. What we see is the growth of short-term rentals that are this larger type of unit is growing much faster than these competing hotel comparable types of properties. So we saw 25 million room nights booked in August alone this year. So when DMOs are trying to get their arms around what is short-term rental, and what is the net impact of these short-term rentals on their local city and their local economy, these are three things that we focus on. One is flexible supply. Now, what do we mean by flexible supply? We mean it's really supply that can change its purpose over the course of a week or a month. We're talking about distributed economic impact. How do properties in different locations of a city help benefit the entire city and not just that central business district of that city? And how do properties better utilize space? So when we think about better utilization of space, we think about that properties that are second homes that are lived in 50 weeks out of the 2 weeks out of the year and left empty for 50, How do we better utilize that space? We're not overdeveloping. We have a better utilization of the space that we currently have. So I'm going to talk about a couple points about how we sort of articulate that to the DMOs. One is, for Philadelphia as an example, I guess it was about 4 years ago now, the Pope came to visit. And you can see in the stats pretty clearly when that was, where properties went from only about 2,000 short-term rentals in Philadelphia in June 2015 and shot up to over 8,000 in a course of 3 months. And then as quickly as it came on board, it went off board, right? It came offline and went back down to a more reasonable 3,500 properties. We could see that really this is what the definition of flexible lodging is, right? It can come on board right when a big event's coming. All the residents can kind of activate their units, bring it online. And why DMOs love this is because most cities can't really accommodate a Super Bowl or an All-Star game or a big event in their market, and short-term rentals allow them to accommodate everybody coming into a marketplace for a huge event. And so they can activate all of the supply, for those events, and they can accommodate much bigger events coming into their marketplace. But what does this also do? It actually normalizes the prices of all those accommodations in that marketplace. So we can see that when there's a big event where hotels love it, they call it a compression event, which means there's 95+% occupancy in a marketplace, that they can jack up their rates, right? And we all are doing revenue management and increasing our rates at the right times. But what this really does is really normalize the price of accommodations during big events. And you can see some of these price differentials in this chart here. And why this is positive is because really the taxation and the economic activity really isn't just for that lodging itself. It is for the broader spending happening in that marketplace. And we feel like this is the additive amount of supply that is coming into a market that is spending money on different restaurants and businesses in that marketplace as well. And focusing on Philadelphia a little bit more, it's very clear from this picture where the red dots are all of the hotels in Philadelphia and the blue dots are all the current short-term rentals in the property. The short-term rentals distribute this economic activity throughout the city a lot more evenly. We can see that it's not kind of centered in this central business district where all these sort of businesses are located. It's able to allow people to travel to and benefit from economically from tourism coming to different parts of the city. We know one of the biggest reasons people choose short-term rentals, not alone just like the value of it, is really the proximity to where they're trying to go. This doesn't make sense for a hotel to try to build a 5-bedroom unit on every other square block of the city. And so short-term rentals really accommodate the supply for people visiting their in-laws or going to a college graduation or visiting somebody in the hospital, something that hotels can't really well do, and short-term rentals are much more well-equipped to accommodate. So DMOs, have also, as we all have, seen what the tremendous growth of short-term rentals are. We look at the growth of hotels in some of these major markets across the US versus how many new short-term rentals have come on the market over the past 12 months. It's pretty staggering, right? And some of these are driven by big events like Atlanta with a Super Bowl. But this, for how mature and professionalized this market is becoming, is still having staggering growth rates compared to the hotels. But what do all DMOs and cities really like is money and taxes. And so that's the biggest thing that we're seeing is $33 billion from an Airbnb study recently, just based off the lodging revenue and direct spending during those trips on short-term rental stays over the last year. And the net benefit of that goes way beyond that, right? It goes into the jobs, it goes into all of the benefits to all the businesses and tours and operators in that location as well. But I think one of the most interesting things, and maybe being sort of the data geek that I am and the economist that I am, is really how the revenue generated for short-term rentals is just a lot different than it is for a hotel. When we're looking at how the money is spent when it's going to a host or a local property manager or a homeowner, 87% of that money goes to that individual, which then in return sort of recycles that money locally. And this is really interesting. It's different than a hotel that's sort of shipping off corporate profits back to headquarters. This stuff goes into home improvements. It goes into investments in their properties and spending in the local community. And so, we see the DMOs sort of really trying to figure out how to adapt to the short-term rental market, right? It's, because they're sort of been funded historically for the last 100 years based off of what the hotel activity is and what those taxes are. They're sort of slowly adapting, really trying to understand what is this economic impact that short-term rentals are having on the general community. And so these are sort of the alternative narrative, right? Instead of the smokescreen about affordable housing that we hear a lot in these local communities and often in the headlines, I think what we are doing by supplying a lot of data to these DMOs is sort of changing that narrative and helping them really understand where the net benefits and benefits of short-term rentals in their marketplace. Thank you.